What if I told you there's a government-backed way to potentially win £1 million, and the absolute worst-case scenario is you simply get all your investment back? Sounds like a financial fairy tale, doesn't it? Especially in today's uncertain economic climate. Most people in the UK know about them, but for the rest of the world, it's a bit of an enigma. Well, hang tight, because by the 3-minute 45 mark of this video, I'm going to pull back the curtain on exactly how these so-called risk-free premium bonds truly stack up against your traditional savings accounts and even volatile investments. The answer might just revolutionize how you think about growing your money safely. Forget every preconceived notion you have about guaranteed returns or lottery odds. We're diving deep into a system that millions swear by and others dismiss entirely. Who's right? Now let's be honest. You're likely here because you're tired of seeing those pitiful interest rates on your savings account, watching your hard-earned cash practically evaporate with inflation, right? You dream of that significant windfall, that one break that could change everything, pay off the mortgage, fund your kids' education, or finally take that round-the-world trip. But the national lottery, it feels like flushing money down the toilet. The odds are astronomically stacked against you. And investing in the stock market, for many, that's a terrifying roller coaster, a gamble with money they simply can't afford to lose, especially if it's their emergency fund or house deposit. The anxiety is real. If you just let your money sit there, inflation gnaws away at its purchasing power. If you chase high-risk opportunities, you could lose the lot. And if you're too paralyzed by fear to do anything, you miss out on any chance of growth, feeling perpetually stuck in a financial limbo. It's this constant tug-of-war between the desperate need for security and the burning desire for more, leaving you feeling frustrated, anxious, and perhaps even a little defeated about your financial prospects. Every single day, you delay finding a smarter, more effective way to manage and grow your savings. Is another day your money isn't truly working for you. Another day, that dream of genuine financial freedom seems to drift further and further out of reach. The current global economic situation certainly isn't helping, is it? The pressure to make your money work harder, yet safer, is immense. Maybe you've diligently searched for those high-yield savings accounts, only to see the advertised rates vanish into thin air or be eaten up by hidden fees. Perhaps you dipped a toe into the crypto craze, only to get painfully burned. Or maybe you've just opted for what feels like the safest route, stuffing it under a metaphorical mattress, too overwhelmed or distrustful to engage with the financial system. These common approaches often fall short because they typically offer a pittance in return for perceived safety, or they demand you stomach an unacceptable level of risk for any meaningful potential reward. Is there a middle ground, a way to chase life-changing returns without risking your principal investment? That's the £1 million question, quite literally in this case. Let me tell you about Arthur Holloway, a thoroughly decent chap from just outside Manchester, a man who believed in a hard day's work and the importance of saving for a rainy day. He wasn't a financial wizard, not by a long shot. He was a planner, a careful soul who diligently saved up a modest sum, around £10,000, from his job as a skilled carpenter. This money wasn't for fancy holidays or a new car. It was his just-in-case fund, his safety net. But Arthur had a problem. He'd watch the news, see the inflation figures, and then look at his bank statement. The interest he was earning. Peanuts. Less than peanuts, actually. He felt like he was running on a treadmill, working hard to save, only to see the real value of his savings slowly, insidiously shrink. His mate, Liam, a bit more of a free spirit, was always on about different investment schemes, some of which sounded downright dodgy to Arthur. "You've got to speculate to accumulate, Artie," Liam would say over a pint down at the Crown. But Arthur couldn't bring himself to gamble with his nest egg. The thought of losing even a portion of it made his stomach churn. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, while browsing online, trying to find anything better than his current savings account, he stumbled upon an article mentioning something called premium bonds. He'd heard of them vaguely, something his nan, bless her, used to have, but he'd never really understood what they were. The headline caught his eye. "Win $1 million, tax-free, with government backing." It sounded too good to be true. A scam, almost. But the source seemed reputable. NS&I, National Savings and Investments, backed by His Majesty's Treasury. Intrigued, but deeply skeptical, Arthur decided to dig a little deeper. He spent hours that evening, hunched over his laptop, the glow of the screen illuminating his worried face. He read about how each bond, costing £1, gets a unique number, how these numbers are entered into a monthly prize draw, how you could win anything from £25 right up to that life-changing £1 million. And the best part, the part that made Arthur lean in closer, your original investment was supposedly 100% safe, guaranteed by the Treasury. You could cash them in whenever you wanted, no penalties, no fees. His mind raced. This wasn't like buying a lottery ticket where your quid was gone forever if you didn't win. Here his £10,000 would still be his £10,000 always, but it would also be 10,000 chances to win every single month. Could this be the answer he was looking for? A way to potentially get a significant return without risking his precious capital? Or was it just another financial gimmick designed to part hopeful savers from their cash, albeit temporarily? The allure of a risk-free shot at $1 million was potent, but Arthur's cautious nature still whispered doubts in his ear. Arthur, being the cautious fellow he was, didn't just dive in headfirst with his entire 10,000. No, he decided to test the waters. He'd start with a smaller amount, say £2,000, enough to feel like he was in the game, but not so much that it would keep him awake at night if this whole thing turned out to be a mirage. The process of buying them online was surprisingly straightforward, much easier than he'd anticipated. He imagined some labyrinthine government form-filling exercise, but it was all rather modern and slick. Within a few days, he received confirmation. His 2,000 bonds were registered. Now came the waiting, and the peculiar kind of anticipation that premium bonds engender. It wasn't like waiting for a dividend payment, which, while welcome, was predictable. This was different. It was a subtle undercurrent of what if that hummed beneath his daily routine. The first month's draw approached. Arthur found himself almost unconsciously checking the NS&I prize checker app on his phone more often than he'd admit. He told himself it was just curiosity, a bit of harmless fun. Liam, of course, found it hilarious. "Still think you're gonna be a millionaire by tea time, Artie?" He'd rib him. "It's not about that, Liam," Arthur would retort, perhaps a little too defensively. "It's about potential and safety." But a small part of him, a part he kept well hidden, did dream of that life-changing call. The first draw came and went. Nothing, not even a 25-pounder. A small pang of disappointment, quickly suppressed. "Well, what did you expect, first time out?" he muttered to himself. The second month, same story, and the third. The initial buzz was starting to wear thin. Was this just a more elaborate way of his money doing nothing, with a monthly dose of false hope thrown in? He started to wonder about the actual odds. He'd read the official prize rate, but what did that really mean for an individual bondholder like him? How many people actually won the big prizes? Were they all held by folks with the maximum £50,000 invested, skewing the odds for smaller savers like himself? These questions began to gnaw at him. Were there unspoken rules, hidden biases in this grand national lottery? This was the first of his many mysteries he felt compelled to unravel. He decided to do more research, this time not just on the NS&I website, but on forums, financial blogs, anywhere ordinary people shared their experiences. He discovered a whole community of premium bond enthusiasts, some who meticulously tracked their mostly small wins, others who debated complex statistical probabilities. He learned about Ernie, the electronic random number indicator equipment, the machine now in its fifth iteration that apparently churned out the winning numbers with unimpeachable randomness. It sounded very official, very high-tech, but still, the sheer scale of it was mind-boggling. Over 24 million people holding bonds worth over £120 billion. How could his little £2,000 possibly stand out? He also learned about the annual prize fund interest rate. It wasn't an interest rate he received directly, but rather the pot from which all prizes were paid. It could go up, it could go down, influenced by Bank of England base rates and government decisions. This was another layer of complexity, another variable that made it harder to predict his chances. It felt less like a straightforward savings account and more like a peculiar financial instrument that sat somewhere in a grey area between saving and, well, a very gentle form of gambling, even if your stake was returned. He began to understand that while his capital was safe, the return was entirely down to luck, sheer, unadulterated luck. Some people, he read, held bonds for decades and won nothing more than a few token prizes. Others, with a modest holding, struck lucky within months. There was no rhyme or reason, or so it seemed. His friend Sarah, a pragmatic accountant, had a very different take. "Arthur," she'd said over coffee, "think of it as an entertainment expense with a potential, albeit tiny, upside. The interest you forgo by not having it in a proper savings account is the price of your monthly thrill. If you win anything, it's a bonus. If you don't, you've lost nothing but that notional interest." Her perspective was grounding, but it didn't entirely extinguish that flicker of what if. He then stumbled upon stories, urban legends almost, of people discovering old bonds tucked away in dusty attics, forgotten for generations, only to find they'd won significant sums over the years, unclaimed. This sparked another thought. What happened to unclaimed prizes? Did they just get absorbed back into the system? The NS&I website assured him they kept trying to trace winners, but how thorough could they really be with millions of bondholders? This became his second mini-mystery, the fate of the lost winnings. Despite his lingering questions and the initial lack of wins, Arthur didn't cash in his bonds. Something made him hold on. Perhaps it was stubbornness. Perhaps it was that tiny, persistent ember of hope. He even considered adding more to his holding, figuring that more bonds equaled more chances, statistically speaking. But the memory of those first 3 winless months held him back. He was in a state of financial equipoise, balanced between cautious optimism and pragmatic doubt. Then came the 4th month. He'd almost forgotten about the draw, busy with a particularly tricky joinery project. It was a Thursday evening. He was knackered, scrolling idly through his phone while the kettle boiled for a cuppa. He opened the prize checker app. more out of habit than expectation. Entered his holder's number. Tapped, check. The screen refreshed. And there, amidst the usual "no prizes won this month" on his smaller initial test batch, something different appeared next to a new set of bonds he'd almost forgotten he'd bought a few weeks prior, with a small windfall from a side job, a little over £500 worth, a line of text he hadn't seen before. His heart gave an odd little jump. It wasn't 1,000,000, it wasn't even 1,000, but it wasn't nothing either. A small but undeniably real prize. And then, as he scrolled down, checking if any of his other older bonds had won, the app seemed to glitch. It froze. Then a strange message popped up, something about verifying details for a specific bond number he didn't immediately recognize. What on earth was going on now? That cryptic message on the prize checker app sent a jolt through Arthur. Verifying details for a bond number he didn't recognize. His first thought was a technical glitch, a system error. He tried refreshing the app, but the message persisted, a prickle of unease mixed with a sudden, sharp surge of curiosity. He quickly cross-referenced the bond number mentioned in the message with the few confirmation emails he had from NS&I, and then he saw it. It wasn't from his initial £2,000 batch, nor the £500 top-up. This particular bond number belonged to a tiny, almost forgotten purchase he'd made even more recently, a mere £100, bought on a whim after seeing an advert reminding people that even small amounts had a chance. He'd almost not bothered, thinking, what's the point of such a small holding? The app still wouldn't show him the prize amount for this specific bond. It just said, "Important information regarding your holding. Please check your NS&I secure messages or await contact." Await contact. That sounded ominous or incredibly promising. His mind, which had been wrestling with the statistical probabilities and the fairness of the draw, was now completely consumed by this new, very personal mini-mystery. Why the secrecy around this particular bond? Why the need for verification? He tried to log into his NS&I account via the website, his fingers fumbling slightly on the keyboard. The kettle whistled, forgotten. After navigating the security protocols, he found the secure message inbox. There was one new message, received just minutes ago. Subject line: urgent, prize notification. His breath caught in his throat. This was it. This had to be something more than the usual 25 quid. He clicked it open. The message was brief, almost maddeningly so. It stated that Ernie had selected one of his bonds for a significant prize in the latest draw, and that, due to the value, an NS&I customer service agent would be contacting him by phone within the next 24 hours to verify his identity and provide further details. A significant prize. The words echoed in his mind. How significant? 1,000, 10,000. His heart was hammering against his ribs now. The careful, analytical Arthur, who pondered prize rates and unclaimed winnings, was momentarily overwhelmed by a wave of pure, unadulterated hope. He thought back to the tales of Agent Million, the mysterious NS&I employees who supposedly visited the £1,000,000 winners in person. Was he about to get such a call, or was this a more modest but still substantial sum? The ambiguity was almost unbearable, yet utterly electrifying. This was the third mini-mystery, the true nature of this significant prize and why it warranted such a cloak-and-dagger notification. The next 24 hours were some of the longest of Arthur's life. He barely slept, replaying the message in his head, trying to decipher the true meaning of significant. He resisted the urge to tell Liam, or even Sarah. If it turned out to be a false alarm, or a relatively small amount blown out of proportion by the vague wording, he'd feel foolish. So he waited, his phone clutched in his hand like a lifeline. Every unknown number that rang made him jump. Finally, around 3 p.m. the next day, an unfamiliar Manchester area code flashed up. He took a deep breath and answered. "Mr. Arthur Holloway?" a polite professional voice inquired. It was happening. The voice introduced herself as Eleanor from National Savings and Investments. She calmly explained the verification process, asking him a series of security questions, which he answered with a dry mouth. Then she paused. Arthur could hear the faint hum of a call center in the background. "Mr. Holloway," Eleanor continued, her tone remaining perfectly level, "I'm pleased to confirm that bond number XXXXXX, which you purchased on date, has won a prize in this month's draw." Another pause. Arthur gripped the phone tighter. "The value of this prize, Mr. Holloway, is £100,000. £100,000. Arthur sank into his chair, speechless. He actually felt a bit dizzy. It wasn't the million, but it was a sum of money so far beyond his everyday comprehension that it might as well have been £100,000, tax-free, from a £100 bond he'd bought on a whim. The irony wasn't lost on him. All his careful calculations, his gradual, cautious investments, and it was this almost throwaway purchase that had yielded such an incredible result. Eleanor went on to explain how the funds would be transferred, the options he had. He barely took it in, his mind still reeling from the number. After the call ended, he just sat there for a long time, staring out of the window, the phone still warm in his hand. The world outside looked the same, but everything felt different. This wasn't just potential anymore. This was real, tangible, life-altering money. He thought about his £10,000 safety net, the one he'd been so worried about. This prize was 10 times that. Suddenly, the concept of risk-free took on a whole new, very personal and very positive dimension. The news, once it sank in, brought a strange mix of elation and a peculiar sense of responsibility. Arthur's first call, after he'd composed himself, was to Sarah. Her reaction was a mixture of stunned silence, followed by genuine delight for him. "See, Arthur," she'd eventually said, "sometimes the universe just throws you a bone when you least expect it." Liam's reaction, when Arthur finally told him, was predictably boisterous, involving a lot of backslapping and enthusiastic, if slightly envious, congratulations. But for Arthur, the win wasn't just about the money. It was a validation in a strange way of his cautious approach, combined with a willingness to take a small, calculated chance where his capital wasn't at risk. It also solved, for him at least, some of those mini-mysteries. Yes, ordinary people with modest holdings could win significant prizes. The system, despite its vastness, could find you. And while the odds were long, the possibility, however remote, was undeniably real. He realized that premium bonds weren't a get-rich-quick scheme, nor were they a traditional investment in the mold of stocks or even high-interest savings accounts. They were something unique, a savings product with a lottery-style thrill underpinned by government security. The revelation that a tiny, almost forgotten investment could yield such a significant return, while his more substantial, carefully considered holdings had, to date, yielded nothing beyond a few token wins, was the most surprising part. It defied his logical carpenter's brain that valued measure and predictability. This win, it felt like pure, unadulterated serendipity, and it made him look at his remaining £9,900 in premium bonds with a completely new perspective. They were no longer just numbers in a drawer. They were sleeping giants, each one a tiny key that might, just might, unlock another extraordinary surprise. The weight of his initial skepticism had lifted, replaced by a sense of quiet wonder. What if that £1,000,000 prize wasn't just a headline, but a genuine, albeit remote, possibility for someone just like him? Arthur's incredible win, while certainly life-enhancing, isn't the £1,000,000 jackpot. And that's a crucial distinction. But it beautifully illustrates the core appeal and the surprising potential of premium bonds. Now you're probably thinking, that's a great story for Arthur, but what about me? How can I understand if this is a genuinely viable option, not just a one-off lucky break? This brings us to the moment I promised earlier. Let's dissect the risk-free millionaire claim and see how premium bonds truly function and how you can evaluate them for your own financial strategy. To do this, we need a clear framework. I call it the DONB, ONDS evaluation system, Mustin. That's BONDS for DORBU, hacking and security. No ODs and payouts, Lididindo lost nature. Your D raw frequency and accessibility, and the key to our certain strategic holding. First up, B for backing and security. This is the absolute cornerstone of premium bonds. They are offered by National Savings and Investments, or NS&I, which is not a bank, but a state-owned savings institution backed by His Majesty's Treasury. This means your entire investment, from £1 up to the maximum holding limit of £50,000, is 100% secure. Unlike bank deposits, which are typically protected by the Financial Services Compensation Scheme up to £85,000 per institution, your premium bond investment is fully guaranteed by the government with no upper limit on that guarantee for the capital itself. For example, if you invested £10,000, like Arthur initially planned for his main sum, that £10,000 is completely safe. If NS&I were to somehow face financial difficulty, the UK government itself stands behind that money. This is the risk-free aspect they heavily promote regarding your capital. The expected result here is peace of mind. You know your initial stake isn't going to disappear due to market crashes or institutional failure. This makes them particularly attractive for emergency funds or savings you absolutely cannot afford to lose. But, and this is a big but, this security applies to your capital, not to any return on that capital. Next, O for odds and payouts. This is where things get a bit more complex. Each £1 bond has an equal chance of winning any prize. The current annual prize fund interest rate, as of my last update, hovers around a certain percentage. Let's say for illustrative purposes, it's 40%. This doesn't mean you get 40% interest. Instead, this rate determines the total pot of money distributed as prizes each month. The odds of any single £1 bond winning any prize in a given monthly draw are published by NS&I. For example, it might be 21,000 to 1. Prizes range from £25, £50, £100, £500, £1,000, right up to £1 million. There are typically 2 £1 million jackpots each month. So, if you hold £100 in bonds, you have 100 chances each month. If you hold £50,000, you have 50,000 chances. For a practical example, Arthur's £100 bond that won him £100,000 beat incredibly long odds for that specific high-tier prize, while his other larger holdings hadn't won much. The expected result is highly variable. You could win nothing for years, or you could win multiple small prizes, or very rarely a large prize. The average payout per person is skewed by those big wins. Most people will experience a return lower than the headline prize fund rate. This is critical. If that prize fund rate is 40%, and a standard easy access savings account offers 5%, you are demonstrably better off with the savings account for a guaranteed return. The allure of premium bonds is the chance of a much higher tax-free return, however slim. One common objection is, doesn't holding the maximum amount give you a much better chance? Yes, more bonds mean more entries, proportionally increasing your chances of winning something. But the odds for each individual bond winning the jackpot remain the same. Then we have N for no-loss nature. As mentioned, your capital is secure. If you invest £5,000, you can withdraw that £5,000 at any time, typically within a few working days, with no penalties or fees. This is a massive advantage over fixed-term savings accounts where your money is locked away, or investments where the value can go down as well as up. For example, if you suddenly need cash for an unexpected expense, you can access your premium bond money without losing a penny of your original investment. The expected result is liquidity and capital preservation. You're not losing your stake like you do with a lottery ticket. However, the hidden cost is inflation and the opportunity cost of not earning guaranteed interest elsewhere. If inflation is running at 3% and your bonds win nothing over a year, your capital has effectively lost 3% of its purchasing power. This is a crucial point many overlook. Following that is D for draw frequency and accessibility. The prize draw happens every month, and you're entered into every draw as long as your bonds have been held for one full prize cycle. Meaning bonds bought in May, for example, are first eligible for the July draw. Checking for wins is easy via the NS&I website, their app, or even by post if you prefer. You can also choose to have any prizes automatically reinvested into more bonds, up to the £50,000 limit, or paid directly into your bank account. For example, Arthur checked his app regularly. If he'd won a £25 prize, he could have it reinvested to buy 25 more bonds, thus slightly increasing his chances the following month. The expected result is regular engagement and ease of management. It's a very low-maintenance way to play for prizes. One might ask, is it a hassle to buy and sell? Generally, no. Buying is done online or by phone, and cashing them in is a similar straightforward process. Finally, S for strategic holding. This is about how premium bonds might fit into your overall financial plan. They are generally not recommended as your sole method of saving or investing, precisely because the returns are unpredictable. However, they can be a good option for money you want to keep safe, but still hope for a better-than-average tax-free return on, particularly for higher-rate taxpayers, as all prizes are completely tax-free. For example, someone who has already maxed out their ISA, individual savings account allowance, and is looking for a tax-efficient place for further savings might consider premium bonds. Or, like Arthur, for an emergency fund where capital preservation is key, but the chance of a win adds a bit of excitement. The expected result is that premium bonds serve a specific niche, capital-secure savings with a lottery-like upside, best used as part of a diversified financial portfolio, not the entirety of it. An objection often raised is, are they good for long-term growth? For guaranteed long-term growth, likely not. Traditional investments like stocks and shares, while carrying risk, have historically offered better long-term growth potential than the average luck with premium bonds. So, the BONDS evaluation system TM helps you see that while you can't lose your initial investment, the risk-free part doesn't apply to achieving a return that beats inflation or other guaranteed savings options. The £1 million prize is real, people do win it. But the odds are very, very long. It's a unique financial product, part savings, part thrill. But what if the thrill wears off and you've won nothing for years? Is there a point where holding them becomes actively detrimental to your financial health, even if your capital is safe? That's the critical question, isn't it? When does the safety of your capital in premium bonds get overshadowed by the relentless erosion of inflation and the missed opportunity of guaranteed returns elsewhere? This is where the BONDS evaluation system, TM, moves from theoretical understanding to practical application. You've got the backing and security. You understand the odds and payouts. You appreciate the no-loss nature of your capital. You know about the draw frequency and accessibility, and you've considered strategic holding. But the lingering doubt for many long-term holders who haven't seen significant wins is precisely that. Am I actually losing money in real terms? And the honest answer is, if your winnings consistently fall below the rate of inflation, then yes, the purchasing power of your money is decreasing. If easy access savings accounts are offering a guaranteed 5% interest, and over 2 or 3 years your premium bond winnings average out to only 1% or 2% or even 0%, then you've effectively lost the difference you would have earned in that guaranteed account. Arthur's big win was fantastic, a statistical outlier for his relatively small winning bond, but for his larger, longer-held sums, his returns prior to that were minimal, if anything. He was, in effect, paying for the thrill of the draw with the interest he was foregoing. This is the non-cash cost of holding premium bonds, so let's wrap this up with a clear takeaway. Premium bonds offer a unique proposition, a 100% government-backed guarantee on your capital, making them exceptionally safe from a loss of investment perspective. You can indeed potentially win $1 million or other substantial tax-free prizes without risking your initial stake. However, they are not a guaranteed way to grow your money. The return is based entirely on luck, and for most people, the average annual prize winnings will likely be less than the interest they could earn in a top-paying savings account. Think of them as a savings account with a lottery ticket attached to every pound you deposit. The key is to understand their place. They are excellent for short to medium-term savings, where capital preservation is paramount, but you'd like a chance at a high, tax-free return. For individuals who have used up other tax-free allowances like ISAs, or for those who find the monthly draw an enjoyable low-stakes thrill, understanding the opportunity cost involved. Premium bonds are less suitable as a primary vehicle for long-term wealth accumulation or retirement planning if you're seeking consistent inflation-beating growth. Arthur's story perfectly encapsulates this. His cautious nature led him to a safe haven for his capital, and serendipity handed him a significant reward on a tiny portion of it. But without that win, He was, like many, simply treading water. Therefore, the answer to premium bonds, can you really win 1 million risk-free, is a qualified yes. Yes, you can win, and yes, your capital is risk-free. But the risk shifts to the potential for your money to underperform inflation and other savings options. The truth revealed is that they are a fascinating hybrid, not a magic bullet. Your decision to use them should be an informed one, weighing that capital security and the dream of a jackpot against the near certainty of better, albeit more modest, returns elsewhere. Now, if you're serious about making your money work smarter, not just harder, and you're intrigued by strategies that blend security with genuine growth potential, you absolutely need to watch my next video. The Safe Growth Triangle, balancing ISAs, fixed deposits and index trackers for maximum returns in the UK. I'll be breaking down exactly how to structure your savings and investments to weather any economic storm and build real sustainable wealth. Click the link in the description or the end screen to watch it now, especially if you're wondering where to put winnings like Arthur's or how to make your existing savings truly count. And finally, I want to hear from you. What's been your personal experience with premium bonds? Have you ever had a significant win, or do you, like many, just enjoy the monthly flutter? Drop your stories and opinions in the comments below. Let's share the collective wisdom.